You know what's wild about Shein? A few years ago, hardly anyone knew the name. Then suddenly, it was everywhere. TikTok hauls, Instagram videos, and those "I bought 30 outfits for $100 challenges took over the internet. The prices were unbelievably low. The styles kept changing, and people couldn't stop filling their carts. If you made it this far, you already know this channel is for you. Hit subscribe so you never miss a story. But behind those cheap deals was a side of Shein that many people never saw. As the brand grew bigger, so did the questions around it. So what's really going on with Shein? Let's find out. Shein became one of the biggest fashion companies on the planet by doing something no other fashion brand had ever done at this scale. Instead of releasing a few collections every year, it turned fashion into something that moved almost as fast as social media. Today, the company sells in more than 150 countries and adds thousands of new products to its website every single day. That's not every week or every month, every single day. While most fashion brands spend months putting together one collection, Shein is busy uploading more new clothes than some brands release in an entire season. For a long time, nobody really cared how they pulled it off. People were simply excited that they could buy trendy clothes for a fraction of the usual price. Need a dress for the weekend? A new phone case? Shoes? Bags? Jewelry? Makeup? Home decor? Shein seemed to have everything, and almost all of it cost less than expected. But after a while, instead of saying, "I can't believe how cheap this is," people started saying, "Wait, how can this possibly be this cheap?" That question became much bigger in 2024. Consumer safety officials in South Korea carried out routine inspections on products sold through major online shopping platforms, including Shein, Temu, and AliExpress. They bought products just like ordinary customers and sent them to government laboratories for testing. Some of the results raised serious concerns. Officials reported that several products sold through Shein exceeded South Korea's legal chemical limits. One pair of children's shoes reportedly contained phthalates at 428 times the legal limit. Another pair of shoes tested later contained 229 times the allowed amount. Inspectors also found high levels of lead in some accessories and excessive formaldehyde in certain clothing items. Now, it's important to be fair. These tests looked at specific products, not everything Shein sells. It doesn't mean every item on the website is unsafe, but when government inspectors repeatedly find products that fail safety standards, people naturally become concerned. So what are these chemicals? One of the biggest names you'll hear is phthalates. They're commonly used to make plastic materials softer and more flexible. The problem is that high levels of exposure over a long time have been linked to hormone and reproductive health concerns. That's why many countries have strict limits on how much can be used in consumer products. Then there's formaldehyde. It's sometimes used during manufacturing to help clothes resist wrinkles and mold while they're being shipped and stored. But if the levels are too high, it can irritate your skin, eyes, and even your lungs. And there's lead, a metal that regulators watch very closely because repeated exposure can be harmful, especially for children. Shein says it regularly tests its products through independent laboratories and removes items that fail safety standards. But these reports revealed a bigger challenge. Releasing thousands of new products every single day is incredibly fast. Checking every single one with the same level of care? That's a much bigger challenge. But the chemical tests were just the surface. Because if you think finding out what's in your clothes is uncomfortable, wait until you find out who's actually making them. And chemical concerns weren't the only issue raising eyebrows. Another question kept coming up. Who is actually making these clothes? For years, journalists and labor groups have looked into factories connected to Shein's massive supply chain. One of the biggest controversies came in 2022 when the UK's Channel 4 released a documentary investigating factories believed to be producing clothes for Shein. The documentary featured workers describing intense conditions, including extremely long shifts during busy periods. Some workers claimed they were working up to 18 hours a day and had very few days off. There were also allegations about wage deductions for mistakes. The report caused a major reaction worldwide, but there's an important detail. The investigation focused on specific factories. Not every factory that works with Shein. Shein pushed back by saying it has strict supplier rules, does not allow forced labor, and took action against suppliers that failed to meet its standards. The company also said it increased factory checks and invested more in monitoring its supply chain. When a company is producing fashion at lightning speed and working with thousands of suppliers, keeping track of every single step becomes incredibly difficult. And that's where critics say fast fashion hits its biggest challenge. It's easy to make clothes quickly. It's much harder to make sure every person involved in making them is treated fairly. Then there's the environmental impact. Shein's business model is built around producing huge numbers of new styles at incredible speed. But with millions of garments being made, not everything gets a second life. Some items are returned, some are barely worn, and many eventually end up as waste. Environmental groups say this non-stop cycle of buying and replacing clothes creates more textile waste, pollution, and pressure on natural resources. Some estimates put global textile waste at more than 90 million tons a year, with less than a fifth of that ever getting reused or recycled. Fast fashion, with its constant stream of new styles and rock-bottom prices, is one of the biggest drivers behind that number. Shein says it is trying to improve by investing in recycling programs, reducing waste, and making its operations more sustainable. But critics argue that producing such a huge amount of clothing creates a problem that is difficult to fix. And now, regulators are paying closer attention too. In 2024, the European Union placed Shein under stricter online platform rules, meaning the company faces more pressure to improve transparency and deal with safety concerns faster. For years, Shein's winning formula was simple: cheap clothes, endless trends, and fast delivery. But now shoppers are looking beyond the price tag. They want to know the story behind what they're buying. And for Shein, the biggest challenge may not be creating the next viral outfit. It may be convincing people they can trust the brand behind it. People are also starting to think differently about the way they shop. A few years ago, the biggest question for many buyers was simple: how cheap can I get it? But now, more customers are looking beyond the price tag. They want to know where their clothes are made, what materials are being used, whether the products are safe, and how the people making them are treated. That change in mindset is putting pressure on the entire fashion industry. Shein says it has taken steps to improve its product testing, carry out stricter checks on suppliers, and remove items that don't meet safety standards. Those steps matter, but for many consumers, the real question is whether these problems will actually become less frequent or if new issues will keep appearing. Managing a global supply chain is not simple. A company selling millions of products from thousands of suppliers faces huge challenges when it comes to quality control. But at the same time, customers don't see the supplier behind the product. They see the brand name. And when something goes wrong, the responsibility usually falls on the company selling it. That's why Shein is under far more pressure today than it was 5 years ago. The company is no longer being judged only by how cheap and trendy its clothes are. People are also looking at safety, transparency, and how responsibly the business operates. And this isn't just about Shein. The entire fast fashion industry is facing a similar challenge. Governments are introducing stricter rules, consumer organizations are carrying out more product testing, and shoppers have become much more aware of what they're buying. Temu, one of Shein's biggest rivals, was hit with the same EU platform designation in 2024, and regulators later fined the company over unsafe and illegal products slipping through its marketplace. It's a sign that Shein isn't an isolated case. It's the first big name in a pattern regulators are now watching across the entire ultra-fast fashion industry. Of course, this doesn't mean every Shein product is dangerous or that every supplier is breaking the rules. The products that failed safety tests were specific items, not the entire range of products the company sells. But every time a problem is discovered, it creates new questions about how those products made it through the system in the first place. So, is Shein finally getting what it deserves? If you're talking about increased scrutiny from regulators, consumer groups, and the public, then yes, the company is facing far more attention today than it did when it was growing at full speed with very little criticism. Whether that pressure leads to lasting improvements is something only time will answer. One thing is already clear though: cheap prices alone are no longer enough to win people's trust. More shoppers want to know how their clothes are made, what they're made from, and whether the company behind them is living up to its promises. Maybe that's the biggest lesson in this story. Fast fashion made buying clothes easier than ever before, but it also encouraged many of us to stop thinking about what happens before a package reaches our doorstep. The investigations into Shein have pushed those questions back into the spotlight, and they're probably not going away anytime soon. So the next time you see a shirt selling for less than the cost of your lunch, it might be worth asking yourself, how was it made? Who made it? And what was the real cost behind that low price? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which company you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.